out of the Soviet Union.
Does Edgar Mitchell claim to have had a personal experience?
No, he's just investigated it and has concluded that this is all very real. And he did come with me. I invited him to the briefing we set up for the head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff at the Pentagon. I think it was very interesting for him to have learned that people at that level were shaken to their foundations because they concluded this was all real, but when they made inquiries, they were being lied to and denied access. And so this brings up this question: who's running this show, and who the foxes are guarding the hen house, and this is exactly goes back to Eisenhower's warning. But we're 50 years into that era now, and so half a century later, as big of a screw up as it was in 1961 when Eisenhower warned us about it, it's 10 times worse than that now, and so much so that I have concluded that the way we change the dynamic on this is that the people will lead, the leaders will have to follow. We do the disclosure. We bring out these technologies. We set up teams to make contact, and we just bypass the government.
The evidence that you have, this or possible evidence of this alien life, before that, this is a more recent thing. This is fairly recent, right? Before that, what was the most compelling piece of physical evidence that you've ever encountered?
I would have to say that it's these really well-documented, complex cases that involve documents, radar cases with photographs, and multiple corroborating credible witnesses such as pilots. What about
landing sites?
I mean, we do. And I actually have been given materials from where the sites have landed, and they're very anomalous. A great case that's in the French files that they released in the Japan, what's it called, Japan, this the space agency like NASA, release was the Provence case of 1981, I believe, when one of these objects landed in a lavender field, of all places.
Must have smelled awesome.
Yeah. Well, it was a commercial lavender farm, and so cool. And it was wee hours of the morning, and this thing lands. The farmer comes out, and it's this disc-shaped craft.
How large?
I think it was in the 50-foot diameter range. And there were these little beings outside picking lavender. Now, this sounds crazy, like some out of science fiction.
Like how little? Like your little guy?
No, these were, from what I remember, like 4 feet, 5 feet, in that range. And then, it left this spot where it had landed, and there were anomalies, electromagnetic sort of radiation into the soil, and this was actually studied by the French government, concluded to be an absolutely real case, just like the Bentwaters Royal Air Force Base case in England was determined to be an authentic case of a landing. So these sort of landing cases that have also now, at the time, there weren't many people coming forward. Now we have all these military people coming forward corroborating. They were there, they saw this, and now the documents are getting released from the UK and France. But in the United States, it's still a black hole.
Now we're going to play your trailer for the upcoming film, Sirius. You got it pulled up, Brian? Yep. Is it queued all the way through?
And here we sit in 2012 with the world still burning oil and gas and coal, when we have had all the information we need to have had a completely new civilization.
Dr. Stephen Greer is absolutely a hero.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
You know, hundreds of billions of dollars. I think the public would be a little annoyed.
All right, sit down and shut up.
I was told to pray, not to meditate. I was told to talk, not to listen. I'm learning to listen.
The primary purpose is to train people to understand these other civilizations and their cultures.
I don't give a goddamn what anybody else says about it. I saw that. But who do you tell without them looking at you like you ain't wrapped too tight? And I was a part of a United States Air Force cover-up for 18 years.
What we are attempting to achieve is a device which defeats the perpendicular force of gravity.
When we look at our data, we lost 7% of weight.
We now have the technology to take ET home.
Consciousness is at once the most familiar thing to us and the most mysterious.
It doesn't take much effort if you just clear your mind.
People are afraid of looking at technology.
Paul Brown stuff got basically suppressed for many years.
He got murdered.
The problem is not proving that UFOs exist. It's when you begin to expose the energy and propulsion systems behind how they're getting here.
That little thing freaked me out.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, you know, I don't mean to sound callous, but being a doctor, I've seen so many worse things. But it's actually fascinating.
Well, that's fascinating. I mean, it freaked me out. Not that it's a dead body. I've seen dead things. It freaked me out that might be a life form. By the way,
it was a life form. We know for a fact it was a life form. What it was is what we're investigating. And I think that one of our witnesses who was on a retrieval team of retrieving extraterrestrial bodies from craft that we had targeted, has talked about the fact that there are many different species that had been cataloged over the years. And at one point, I think it was in the late 60s, there were like 68 or 69 or something in that range. If you look at space and look at the stars, probably every stable star system has planets around it they're discovering. And there's the likelihood that there's an enormous diversity of life out there is a statistical certainty. Even the conventional astronomers and the Drake formula will support that. The question is, have they gotten here? Well, most probably wouldn't be able to, just like we weren't for thousands and thousands of years. But there's such hubris to think that, we're at the pinnacle of technology on Earth in 2013. We're not. I think that when you begin to look at the progression of technology, once you reach a breakout point, as we have in the last century here, in fact, most of the big breakthroughs in technologies no one knows about. They exist, but they're in a classified project. And that's, I think, as big or a bigger story than the ET story, is the fact that there is a cabal of, as I said, sociopathic, misanthropic folks who have decided their macroeconomic grip on power needs to be maintained through this sort of ruthless secrecy, and where they keep from the public this information, not because they think people are going to hurl themselves off the Brooklyn Bridge because we're not alone in the universe, but because when this comes out and this information comes out, it means that the sciences already exist so that we can get off oil and gas and coal. And you know what? A Goldman Sachs guy said that's a $600 trillion nut you're cracking right there.